Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. From the start of Team 7's career it was always the exact same thing. The three of them would show up at the time that Kakashi had specified. They would wait 2 hours for the masked man to show up, and when he finally did arrive he would give some lame excuse on how a cat crossed his path, or he got lost on the road of life. Afterwards they would go to the Hokage Tower to receive their D-rank mission where he would do all the work while the rest of his team, his so-called comrades, would sit on the sidelines and watch him struggle to finish the mission. Once the mission was over they would go through teamwork exercises, where he and Sakura would spar Sasuke and Kakashi would give the damn Uchiha pointers on how to fix his form. Once the official training sessions were over, he would leave along with Sakura while Kakashi took Sasuke to a secret training ground where he would personally train the Uchiha in Taijutsu, Genjutsu, and Ninjutsu. Hell, he even taught him some basic Kenjutsu. The only reason Naruto knew this was because he had followed the two in hopes he could ask Kakashi for some pointers. After the wave mission Naruto became even more depressed. During the mission he had finally made a true friend. Haku was beautiful, she was the itinerary of beauty. She had a good heart, a kind spirit, and she understood his pain. Naruto felt like he was falling in love with her. The two had met the day after they brought Kakashi to Tezuna's place. The two had conversed and comforted each other as they spoke about their past. The two had gone on small dates around town, they had taken long walks in the forest, they even trained a bit together. By the end of the week the two had grown extremely close. Naruto offered to bring both her and Zabuza to Konoha. Haku was easy to convince and she swore that she would convince Zabuza to accept the deal. The two departed with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Naruto was so happy that day that he had trouble sleeping, a mistake that he would never forget. The next morning he awoke to find that his team had gone to the bridge. He quickly dressed himself as he stopped a pair of thugs who were about to Inari and Tsunami. He ran with all the speed he could muster and managed to get to the bridge as his team attacked the Zabuza and Haku who were trying to make a deal. Sasuke had attacked Haku while Kakashi engaged Zabuza. He didn't make it 3 feet before he was ambushed by another group of thugs. When he finally finished he ran to the bridge. When he finally got there he was greeted to a morbid sight that would haunt his nightmares forever. Kakashi had ran a ball of lightning right through Haku and Zabuza's chest. Zabuza managed to stay alive long enough to Gato and a few of his thugs before death claimed him. When he finally managed to get out of his shock from seeing the life be ripped from his dear Haku-chan he presented himself before his sensei who ordered him to quickly bury the two. As the rest of his team left he had to contain himself from attacking Sasuke as he kicked Zabuza's corpse and walked over Haku's arm. He had spent as much time as he could burying the only woman who had ever showed him kindness in her adopted father. He had spent hours carving out beautiful headstones for their graves. When he finally returned to Tezuna's house he immediately went on the roof and cried himself to sleep. When they all returned to Konoha he had reclused himself, trained until he dropped from exhaustion, only leaving his training area for team meetings and food. Besides that he slept and trained in one of the older training grounds until he dropped from exhaustion. However, one day he felt drawn to leave his chosen training grounds. He ran through the village until he found a few Kumo shinobi entering the village. The Kumo ninja entered in a group of 4 with a man wearing cage robes leading them. There was a girl with blonde hair and cat-like eyes. She appeared to be a year older than him. There was also a large dark-skinned man with 8 swords on his back wearing sunglasses. The last member did not interest him, only his 2 teammates did. There was an aura of familiarity about the two. The same thing happened the next day. He ran to the place he felt the energy and found a young woman with crimson hair wearing tomboyish style clothes entering the village with an elderly man with white hair. The two were both carrying medical field equipment, and he got the same feeling from the young girl that he got from those two Kumo nin. Later that day he ran to the gates again to see a team from Mist being led by a beautiful-looking woman. She was leading a group of 3, but like the Kumo nins, only 2 interested him in the slightest. The man with silky black hair and kept a calm exterior while he blew bubbles from some form of pipe drew his interest. The same thing happened with the brash-looking man with a scar across his left eye. He had green hair and wore a basic Mist uniform with more natural applications added to it. He got the same feeling again from the 2 Kumo nin and the young woman. The same thing happened over the week. He got similar feelings of familiarity from a waterfall kunoichi, 2 Iwa ninja, as well as a sand genin. He wondered what the feeling was, and he wondered if they had the same sense of familiarity that he did. He pondered what the feeling was that was making him run to the gates until he decided it wasn't important. When he finally went to sleep, he slept with dreams, his tormented life, his anger, his pain, unaware that the other 9 shinobi he met were all a part of a plot that he and they would decide, unaware of the conversations going on in not only his head, but the other 9. With the Sand team, Gaara had been extremely confused. Ever since he entered the village he felt at peace. The demon that always demanded he and slaughter, the one who he saw as a mother to him, had silenced itself of these demands. In fact, the demon now acted as if it were Gaara's mother. She cooed him to sleep, she comforted him, she encouraged him. The silence from their brother had unnerved his 2 siblings. They had become restless and more worried. What if their brother went insane at a moment's notice? The 2 often slept with their weapons right next to them, fearing they would be awoken with the need to fight for their lives. Gaara had walked through the village, and he always had this longing, this need to go search for something, anything, but he always ignored it. He would return to the place they were staying, always feeling hollow, as if he had not accomplished what he set out to do. He was not the only one who felt this way. With the Iowa team, Han and Roshi were considered the hotheads of Iowa. Out of all of Iowa, the only person who could match them in craziness was the missing Nin Deidara, but now, the hotheads were calm, quiet, collected. The Tsuchikage had come with the 2 fearing that they would go nuts and destroy the village. True, he disliked Konoha, but regardless of how quickly Iowa recovered from the last 3 shinobi wars, each war gave Konoha many benefits that only served to make them stronger. He was not going to risk Iowa's safety because of some old grudge. Roshi and Han always meditated, trying to contact their inner demon, but why? No one realized they weren't the only ones trying to contact their inner demons. With the waterfall team, Fu was the most dangerous kunoichi in the waterfall village. She is just one of several shinobi who make their village feared amongst the minor villages. She also was considered a tomboy. She was brash, rude, disrespectful, but now she was meditating, trying to contact the demon sealed within her by the former village leader. Most believe the old leader died from drinking the hero's water, when in reality he died using a forbidden jutsu to seal the demon inside of her newborn body. She was told of her status as a Jinchūriki from the moment she turned 5 and was trained to be the strongest kunoichi of her time. Some even wondered if she could hold her own against some whirlpool ninja, if there were any still alive, that is. The young kunoichi was quiet while the rest of her team drank and gambled in the red light district, unaware that she wasn't the only demon container in Konoha. With the Mist team, Yugura and Utakata sat facing each other as they sharpened each other's blades while the Godime Mizukage watched them. She was charged with keeping an eye on Yugura since she was the one who gave the tyrant Mizukage a second chance. She had used her clan's special jutsu, a jutsu that returned one to the age of 13 and erased their memories to make the old tyrant a child again, thinking she could him, but she lost her resolve to him when she saw the innocence in his eyes. She took the title of Mizukage and gave Yugura a second chance. Yugura and Utakata became quick friends as fellow Jinchūriki. The two became known as the dynamic duo of the mist. The two, however, were nothing like they always acted. They were usually calm but brash. Now they were nervous and edgy. They felt a familiar presence in this village, a presence that called them, yet they ignored, something another Jinchūriki did as well. With the medics, Amaru was repeatedly cleaning her medical supplies, constantly counting through the various nerves and pressure points of the body, all to keep her mind distracted from the presence that called to her. Her teacher was nervous. The two had come under Konoha's Ronin qualifications so she could become noted when they rebuilt their long-destroyed village. He was afraid that the young girl who he began to see as his own child would be hurt in these exams. Amaru was usually happy and cheerful, now she was moody and annoyed. She always sat by the sink, cleaning her tools, counting through various body parts and lethal points. Hell, she ran through them in her sleep trying to silence the feelings she felt. She wasn't the only one trying to silence something. With the Kumo team, Kurabi and Yugito became cranky and moody. They were hardly ever without some form of weapon with them, and they would randomly shout for their Biju to shut the up. Kurabi's brother, the Raikage, was becoming nervous of his brother and his finest kunoichi. He was always readying the seals his father had given him before he died, sealing up the Hachibi in his younger brother. The two Jinchūriki always argued with their demons now, and they usually had such a great relationship with their Biju, no one knew the plot that was about to unfold. General Pav, the 10 Jinchūriki, all gathered in Konoha. None of them knew the plot that was about to unfold. The only thing they knew was that they felt a familiar presence, never knowing why, but always hoping they could find an answer. A single thought ran through all of their minds. What the hell is going on? Little did they know, was that their Biju knew, and were discussing it as that thought ran through their minds. Mindscape. A midnight sky, a full moon, this was the scene in the Biju's grand mindscape, where they conversed, planned, and made decisions that would alter the world they ruled. The calm scene was broken by a storm of chakra as the energy created by the storm began to take form, make shapes known throughout the elemental countries. The first shape to form was a long fat form with a dark aura emanating from it. As the form began to solidify, it showed a leech-like form with a white no mask with the kanji for 0 right upon the brow. This was the Ribi no Minharu. The next shape to take form was a bloated shape with a chaotic aura around it. As the form began to solidify, it showed a tanuki made from sand and covered in purple vein-like markings. This was the Ikibi no Shukaku. The third shape to form itself was slim and cat-like. It had a cold dead aura around it. As the form solidified, it revealed a cat made of black fire with glowing golden eyes. This was the Nibi no Baraneko. The fourth shape to form itself was bloated and covered in jagged shapes. As it solidified, it revealed a massive turtle that was missing one of its eyes. This was the Sanbi no Kyodaigame. The fifth shape to be revealed was slim yet bulky, almost humanoid in appearance. As it took full form, it revealed a massive red monkey covered in fire. Its fangs were like massive swords. This was the Yonbi no Suru. The sixth shape was one of the largest. It had a slim figure with a bulky body with a slim and narrow head. As its form became true, it revealed a warped creature that resembled a horse with a dolphin's head. This was the Gobi no Irakauma. The seventh being was bulky, and its form seemed to release a weird substance. When the being took shape, it revealed the most hideous creature one could ever see. The creature was a massive slug with 2 small feet that looked like they were too small to be considered useful. This was the Rokubi no Namakuji. The eighth being was slender, as well as smaller than all the other ones, but it still held an aura of power. Once it solidified, it revealed a massive beetle with horns. This was the Shichibi no Kabutomushi. The ninth being was bulky and slender. It had an aura of power that made all the others in the room seem pathetic. When the aura became solid, it revealed a massive ox with tentacle tails. This was the Hachibi no Kyogyu. And the final form, the one that emanated a power so great that it made all the others tremble in fear, was slender and muscular. As the great aura solidified, it revealed a fox, a massive fox that outsized and outpowered all those in the mindscape. This was the Kyuubi no Yoko, current leader of the Biju since the true leader's passing. Kyuubi looked around at his brethren, the demons who he fought with for the last 300 years, the ones who he had risen with to their current status as they trounced the former order of the Biju with their greatest leader, finally gathered together at last. Kyuubi grunted in amusement. It's been a while since the 10 of us last convened, hasn't it? The Ribi was the one to answer. Indeed, Kyuubi, not since the time that our leader's passing. Shukaku spoke up. Yes, not since we became leaderless. Had it not been for Kyuubi guiding us up to this point, we would not be where we are. Nibi purred out a response. Indeed, but it is time we chose a true leader, one who can bring us above what we are, and we now have that opportunity. Sanbi snarled. When can we choose a leader? I have nothing against Kyuubi, but we have been idle for far too long for my tastes. Yonbi spoke in a wise yet aggravated tone. I must agree. Without true leadership, we will merely disappear into history like most of the fallen Biju. Gobi added. Indeed, hardly anyone remembers that old dog except for his chosen clan. Rokubi gurgled out. I hope the chance we have been waiting for does not pass us by. We will not get another chance like this. Shichibi buzzed out. Indeed, we may be immortal, but we can only be sealed a few times before we cannot be sealed again, and most of us are on our last host. Hachibi grunted towards Kyuubi. So, what is the plan, Kyuubi? Or is it a work in progress as usual? Kyuubi looked at Hachibi in annoyance. I have a plan, Hachibi. By the end of the next few months, we will have a new leader. The Biju nodded their heads as they faded into darkness, leaving Kyuubi in the mindscape, pondering their next move. With Naruto, team meeting spot. Naruto was walking up to the team's meeting spot at the bridge at 5 o'clock in the morning, again. He had bags under his eyes that probably broke Konoha records. He had spent the entire night training himself into the ground, trying to forget that image from Wave. It didn't work. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Haku's mangled corpse as he buried her in the ground. He saw the blood on his hands as he carried her in the ground. Why can't he just forget it? He shook his head and slumped to the ground as his teammates arrived at the bridge. Oh, Sasuke-kun, want to go on a date with me tonight? Naruto snorted at the annoying Banshee. How the hell could I have ever liked her? No. Naruto made a mental note. That's the 50th time he has rejected her since we returned from Wave. The two noticed Naruto and decided to comment. Hey Dobi, why do you even bother showing up when everyone knows you won't make it as a shinobi? Sasuke waited for Naruto's response. When he got none, he grew angry. Answer your superiors, Dobi. Naruto merely glanced at Sasuke and went back to ignoring him. Sakura shouted her agreement. Yeah, Dobi, you should be on your knees thanking Sasuke for acknowledging your existence. Naruto clenched his fist and released a small amount of intent. It wasn't much, but it was more than enough to make the other two tremble in fear. Naruto, the baka is never like this. How can the Dobi release such an intent? I should be the one to have this skill and power. Naruto stopped releasing intent as Kakashi entered the field. Kakashi saw that his two favorite students were trembling worse than Tei did on the Wave mission. He looked to see that Naruto had no reaction. He narrowed his eyes thinking that the Dobi had caused this. Naruto, what did you do to your teammates? Naruto glared at Kakashi and snarled out a response. I shut them up, Hatake. Get used to this. Naruto got up and walked in front of Kakashi. Now, what excuse will it be today? I am not in the mood today, so I would like to know why you are late so I can get to training myself, since you clearly only care about the Uchiha, so. Kakashi released a small amount of intent that didn't even faze the blonde. He sighed and rubbed his temple. Okay, I had to get these papers so you three could sign up for the Chunin exams. Kakashi pulled out 3 forms. Before he could pass them out, Naruto snatched one out of his hands as he quickly signed the form and shoved it back in the Jonin's hand. Is that all? Kakashi sighed and nodded his head as Naruto left the field. The other 2 genin quickly signed the papers as they followed the blonde, wondering what was going on with him. With Naruto was walking through the village, that same feeling that has been driving him crazy for the last 2 weeks occurring again and again. Ever since those people entered the village, he felt incomplete, as if there was something he needed to accomplish. Naruto was about to make a left turn when, hey Naruto. Naruto turned around to see Sakura coming up the street. What the hell is wrong with you, Dobi? You ignored Sasuke, you disrespected Sensei, what the hell is going on here? Naruto turned around and began walking off, and on top of that, you haven't asked me for a date once since we got back from Wave, what's the deal? Naruto just kept walking, I'm talking to you. She ran after him as a square stone came out in front of her. She tried to stop but ended up tripping right over the rock, crushing it. Wait, what? Naruto heard a crash and turned around to find Sakura laying on top of box that was on top of Konohamaru and 2 other brats. Konohamaru, why are you crushed under Sakura? Konohamaru smiled at the blonde and shouted. We were training, boss. We were looking for you so you could play ninja with us. Naruto chuckled at the 3, that is until Sakura put her 2 cents in. PSH, what would a ninja be doing playing ninja? The 3 kids looked at Sakura and then at Naruto. The little girl amongst the brats raises her hand and starts shaking it in the air. Naruto noticed this. What is it, kid? The girl stopped shaking her hand. Is she your girlfriend? Naruto quirked an eye at the girl's question and let out a soft and sad chuckle. No, she isn't. Naruto turned to walk off, nor will she ever be. Sakura was shocked at Naruto's proclamation. She wondered what had happened to the blonde. Konohamaru ran up to Naruto and tried to get him to talk. When that didn't work, he decided to grab Naruto's shuriken pouch and began running off with it. Hey, give that back, you brat. Naruto chased after Konohamaru. He was about to make a jump for the brat when he noticed a man wearing a black cat suit. He was one of the genin who came into the village with the sand genin that caught his interest. Konohamaru turned around and ended up running right into the sand genin. He looked up as his shirt was grabbed by the cat man with makeup. You little shit, I ought to teach you some manners. The genin was about to hit him when the blonde-haired kunoichi next to him grabbed his wrist. Kankuro, now is not the time. If you want to hit someone, wait for the exams, or he will be angry. The one known as Kankuro shivered a bit and threw the kid to the ground. Fine, Temari. Where the hell is Gaara anyway? Kankuro looked up to see Naruto glaring at him. The 2 glared at each other until Naruto quirked an eyebrow. He then snapped his head towards the tree as he saw the sand genin that caught his interest appear in a swirl of sand. He was followed by Sasuke appearing in a swirl of leaves. Naruto stared at the sand genin. This was one of the genin that released an aura of familiarity, but why? Gaara was staring at Naruto as Sasuke appeared right next to the blonde. What is your name? Sasuke smirked and answered. My name is Uchiha Sas. He was silenced by a glare from Gaara. Not you. He turned his attention towards Naruto. Him. Naruto went wide-eyed. Why was this guy asking for his name? My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara glared at him again. Who do you contain? Naruto was shocked beyond belief. How did this guy know he contained a biju? Gaara was curious about why he was asking that question, but it was what his mother wanted. Yes, which biju do you sire? Naruto swallowed a lump in his throat. Kyuubi no Yoko, how did you know what I was? Sasuke and Sakura looked at Naruto in shock and fear. He was the container of the demon that almost destroyed their village years ago. Gaara smiled. I know, for I contain one of its brethren, the Ikibi no Shukaku. We will meet again. Gaara shunshined away in a swirl of sand as his teammates followed. Naruto was still wide-eyed, but he was excited. There was another like him. He wondered if there was any others in the world. He smirked and continued to walk off as the 5 individuals with him stared at him with fear. Naruto walked up the stairs of the academy as his teammates followed behind him, keeping their distance. Naruto walked up 2 flights of stairs when he stopped. He noticed an irregularity in the air, as if something was manipulating his senses to make him perceive something else. Genjutsu, he mentally thought to himself. He looked to his left to find that there was a large group of people standing in front of a room that said 301, but any fool could figure out that it was a genjutsu. He smirked as he began walking up the stairs. Hey you! Naruto snapped his head to find that Sasuke and Sakura had walked over to the small group. He better not be doing what I think he is doing. Naruto quickly walked over to his 2 teammates. Sasuke decided to show how great he was by revealing the genjutsu. Drop the genjutsu, we all know this as the 2nd floor. Sasuke smirked when the 2 genin in front of him quirked an eyebrow. Sakura here saw it before anybody. He turned towards the Banshee, right Sakura? Sakura was wide-eyed that Sasuke was actually talking to her. Anyo, yes, of course, this is clearly the 2nd floor. As soon as she finished, the genjutsu was dropped. Sasuke and Sakura smirked, until the back of their shirts were grabbed and they were tugged back towards the stairwell. They tried to see who grabbed them, but before they could look they were slammed against the wall. They looked up and were terrified to see that Naruto was glaring at them. I am surprised that you 2 did not use the opportunity given to us to avoid more competition. Naruto's tone was clearly aggravated and he was obviously not happy with the 2. The fact that he was the Jinchūriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko did not help their quivering fears in the slightest. Naruto dropped the 2 and was about to walk up the stairs. Hey you! Naruto turned around to find a Hyuga, a girl with buns in her hairs, and a guy wearing a green jumpsuit with a bowl cut and massive eyebrows walking over to him. Naruto stared down at the 3. What is it? His tone showed his annoyance. The Hyuga sneered and pointed at Naruto. You, what is your name? Naruto snorted as if he was amused. To think a Hyuga has such bad manners that he would demand someone's name before giving his own. Naruto began walking off until the Hyuga grabbed his shoulder. You insolent wretch, you need to learn how to properly address your betters. The Hyuga reared back a palm strike and was about to slam it into Naruto's chest, severely injuring him, that is until Naruto grabbed the hand that was holding onto his jumpsuit. The Hyuga quirked an eyebrow until, crunch, he cringed and made a grab for his hand as Naruto began to apply a severe amount of pressure to the hand. It seemed that a few of the fingers' bones were broken. The Hyuga struggled until Naruto let go of his hand. He stumbled back but quickly righted himself. Naruto sent a glare at the Hyuga and then proceeded to continue up the steps with his team falling close behind. The 3 genin all had different reactions. The girl, Tenten, was shocked by the seemingly innocent boy's brutality. The boy wearing the leotard, Rock Lee, was shocked that someone had managed to do in a few seconds what he has been trying to do for years. The Hyuga Neji, was angry that this peasant had dared to lay a hand on him. Neji scoffed and proceeded to turn around to walk a different direction. Tenten followed close behind, Lee stayed put and began to walk up the steps after the blonde and his teammates. Meanwhile, Naruto was walking towards the testing room across a wide lobby with his teammates standing away from him as they slowly followed. They had just reached the other side. Hey you, with the attitude. Naruto snarled in annoyance. The last thing he needed was some moron with an ego. He slowly turned around to find that the odd-looking genin from before was standing on the balcony. You have some nerve doing that to a fellow Konoha-nin. Naruto shook his head in annoyance. What do you want, bushy brows? Lee jumped from the edge and landed in a Goken Taijutsu stance. I am Rock Lee, you are Uzumaki Naruto, am I correct? Naruto smirked that this guy knew his name. Indeed it is, and how exactly do you know my name? Lee smiled a massive smile as he did a pose. My sensei and Kakashi-san are rivals. He has told me of his rival's team. I heard about the Uchiha's skills, Sakura-chan's intelligence, and I also heard about a no-talent genin by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. If what you did to Neji is considered no talent, then I wish to test how strong you are. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and shrugged as he got into a fighting stance that no one recognized. Alright, your move, Lee. Lee smiled as he got into a Goken stance. Naruto smirked as Lee shot himself forwards with his fist raised. Just before Lee's fist connected, he sidestepped it and delivered a knife strike to the elbow. Lee was shocked by the move. Having never seen this type of taijutsu used before, he was unprepared for the pain dealt by that blow. He staggered for a moment as Naruto dealt a painful kick to the middle of his chest. Lee staggered back and clutched his chest in pain. He looked up to find that a foot was coming right down on his head. He moved out of the way in time to avoid the foot. He watched as the foot did damage to the concrete floor beneath it. Naruto cringed a bit. The problem with that kick was that if you missed and it hit something hard, it hurt like a bitch. He moved his foot back to a fighting stance as Lee began pounding his chest to make sure it was fine. Are you done testing me, Lee? If not, I can say we only have 23 minutes before we have to head to the exam room. Lee scowled and charged forwards. He unwrapped the bandages around his arms and threw a punch. The bandages went straight at Naruto, sching, but were stopped by a sharpened windmill. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and then turned to see a turtle. The turtle was massive in size. It was not too big, but it was surely noticeable in size. It seemed to be scowling at Lee. Naruto also sensed a bit of chakra, suggesting that the turtle was a summon. Lee jumped in front of the turtle and kneeled. Sensei, I am sorry, but Lee was cut off by the turtle. Damn it, Lee, you know that jutsu is forbidden, so why did you use it? You should be at the exam room, not fighting your comrades. Lee seemed to become downcast. Are you ready for your punishment? Lee nodded his head. The turtle yelled out, Behold, made a guy. There was a poof of smoke on the turtle's back and it revealed an older version of Lee with a Junin vest. Why hello, I am Maida Guy, the stunning green beast of the leaf, and taijutsu specialist. The odd man struck a pose until he saw Lee. Lee, you imbecile. Lee was punched square in the jaw and sent to the other side of the room. The man quickly ran over to Lee. Oh Lee, I am so sorry, you are too old to be a boy, and yet too young to be called a man. Lee began to let tears fall at his sensei's words, Guy sensei. Oh Lee, the two embraced each other in a manly hug, or as manly as it can get with that damn sunset background, and cried tears as a sunset background with waves appeared behind them. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura began twitching at the sight. Oh my god, I am trying to release it but it won't go. Sakura kept up trying to release it, praying it would. I don't know which is worse, this genjutsu, or the massacre. I am conflicted. Sasuke was twitching worse than when Itachi forced him to watch his family die. Find a happy place, find a happy place, find a happy place, can't think of one. Naruto was scared worse than any of the beatings he received growing up, and he had plenty to choose from. The two continued until the one known as Guy smiled at them. Well, if it isn't Kakashi's kids. Guy walked over to the turtle. So, has Kakashi taught you three properly, or is he slacking off as usual? Naruto snorted. Yeah, he was training, the Uchiha. The turtle noticed Naruto's annoyed misdemeanor and questioned it. Hey, Gaki, what's the problem? Naruto turned towards the turtle and snorted. None of your damn business. The turtle snarled at the blonde and marched over. Now you listen to me, you brat. I am trying to be civil here, so you had better show me some respect or so help me all. The turtle's rant was cut off by a substantial amount of intent. Everyone turned their heads to find a mist nin carrying a long pole with a camellia on the tip. He had purplish-colored eyes, a green scarf, a black shirt with short fishnet sleeves. He also had a stitched scar down his left eye. The turtle trembled as the man sunshined in a swirl of camellia blossoms. The man snarled at the turtle. I would suggest you watch how you treat my brethren, turtle. I doubt your master would be very pleased. The turtle trembled as the man walked over to Naruto. He was slightly taller than Sasuke, about the same height as the Hyuga from before. How are you, brother? Naruto quirked an eyebrow, causing the man to chuckle a bit. Sorry, I guess you didn't know I too am a vessel. Naruto went wide-eyed as the man did a curt bow. Yugura, Jinchūriki of the Sanbita Kyodai game, and you are. Naruto began to sputter, excited that there was another like him. Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchūriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Lee was shocked that there were two Jinchūriki containers. Everyone else watched in fascination as the two conversed. Yugura looked at the clock and frowned. We better get going, brother, or none of us will become Chunin. Yugura walked off. He then turned towards Naruto. I look forward to fighting you, my brother. He then walked through the doors to the testing room where the other two mist nin on his team were waiting for him. Naruto turned towards his team who were trembling. Come on. Naruto began walking towards the testing room as his teammates followed. The moment that they got in front of the testing room, Kakashi appeared right in front of Naruto and sent a small hard glance at Naruto. The same thing from the anime happened. Naruto walked through the doors and saw the 100 or so genin in the room. He smirked as he saw Gaara and Yugura. The two Jinchūriki brothers smiled back at him. Hey guys. Naruto turned to see Ino running up to them with Choji and Shikamaru trailing behind. How are you guys doing? She smiled as Sasuke came into the room. She quickly glomped him, which Naruto rolled his eyes at. Well, it looks like the whole gang is here. Naruto watched as Kiba and his team walked up to them. Naruto watched as Hinata got a dreamy look in her eyes from watching him. Naruto quirked an eye, wondering why she had that look. He shrugged and paid it no mind, thinking that she was looking at someone else. Hey, you lot should keep it down. Naruto and the gang looked to see a white-haired Konoha genin with glasses begin to walk up to them. This isn't the place to go shouting around, but I guess the cute little rookies wouldn't know this. Anyway, my name is Yakushi Kabuto. Kabuto looked at the 9 genin and smirked. Hey, do any of you want information on some genin? Naruto looked at Kabuto with a calculating eye as Sasuke walked up. I would like information on Sabaku no Gaara, Rock Lee, and Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto glared at Sasuke, who noticeably flinched, confusing everyone in the vicinity. Oh, you know their names, that's no fun. Kabuto reached into his ninja pouch and pulled out a deck of blank cards. Naruto quirked an eye until he noticed that Kabuto was pouring a bit of chakra. The card showed a picture of Sabaku no Gaara with his various stats. Okay, let's see here. Sabaku no Gaara, genin rank, has been on 5D ranks, 2B ranks, and 1A rank. He has never been scarred in his life. Impressive. Kabuto took out another card and began charging chakra into it. The card showed Rock Lee and his various stats. Next up is Rock Lee. He has no skill in ninjutsu or genjutsu due to a disease he received from his mother, has been on 23D ranks, 5C ranks, and is extremely skilled in Goken Taijutsu, not bad. Kabuto pulled out one more card and charged chakra into it. The card showed Uzumaki Naruto along with his stats. Last but not least, Naruto, surprise me shitless Uzumaki. Naruto scowled at the genin's attempt to make a joke out of his surprise, has chakra reserves that are beyond Junin, is incapable of using low-level genjutsu, low-level ninjutsu is also beyond his reach. Is only capable of ninjutsu and genjutsu that are B rank or above, maybe high C rank. Everyone was staring at Naruto with surprise, and a bit of fear from Sasuke and Sakura. Surprisingly, he is the dobi of his class. He has been on 12 Team D ranks, 5 Solo D ranks, and 1 Team A rank with a single Solo A rank before he even became a genin. I must say I am impressed. Not many genin can claim to have done a Solo A rank directly received from the cage of their village. Naruto smiled at him, but released a bit over intent. By the way, do you happen to have stats on the various villages? Kabuto smiled as he took out another card and charged chakra into it. The card immediately showed a map of the elemental nations with the village stats showing next. There are over 12 teams from Konoha, 3 from Suna, 6 from Iwa, 1 from Taki, 5 from Kiri, as well as a few Ronin with qualification from the daimyos. Also, there is 1 team from the new Odo village, but I wouldn't worry about them, they are probably beneath most of you guys anyways. Besides that, there are mostly ninja from the smaller villages. Kabuto smiled as Naruto's intent led up. Meanwhile, the team of Odo Nin were glaring at Kabuto. They got even more pissed when Naruto shouted out that he would kick those weakling Odo Nins. The one that looked like a mummy got a face tick and turned towards his 2 comrades, all for kicking the blonde say I. The bandaged man smirked. It was unanimous. They jumped over the other genin and charged at the blonde. No one noticed the 3 ninja about to intercept them. Naruto turned his head as the 3 Odo genin charged at him. Naruto snarled and got into a fighting stance as they all were about ready to strike. Clang, crunch, shing. Naruto looked up to see a giant of a man wearing samurai armor and some sort of steam machine grabbing the mummy mon's wrist gauntlet. A man wearing old traditional guard robes and had a red mark go across his face held a knife at the spiky-headed Odo genin's throat. The young red-headed woman was behind the Odo kunoichi and had a scalpel at her throat. The large man spoke with a booming voice. I would suggest you think before you attack someone. The other man spoke as he pressed the knife closer to the genin's throat. You never know who is watching their back. The young woman turned her head towards Naruto. Isn't that right, brother? Silence. Everyone was shocked how the young woman referred to Naruto. Were they related, or was it just some witty remark? Kiba voiced the thought on everyone's head. Brother. I thought Naruto was an orphan. Naruto looked at Kiba and smirked. They are family by a different way. Naruto glanced at Sasuke and Sakura. Right, guys? The 2 genin shivered as they nodded their head, knowing exactly what Naruto meant. Naruto smiled and turned towards the 3. I hope to see you 3 in the exams. The 2 men turned around and smiled at Naruto, or I smiled in the samurai's case. Indeed, brother. The 3 walked off as the rest of the genin in the room shivered at the presence of the 4. It didn't help that 5 others began releasing the same aura. Not even a second later, a large bear-like man came into the room. All right, you maggots, I am the proctor for the first exam, Morino Ibiki. 5 minutes later, they were inside a room with desks and papers. Everyone sat down as the proctors examined them. The bear-like man spoke up, getting everyone's attention. All right, these are the rules, and no one interrupts me, or you all will fail. Everyone was extremely quiet at that point. Good, there are 10 questions. You will be answering the first 9 during the first 45 minutes, the last 15 minutes will have the final question. If you cheat, then you will be docked down 2 points for each found cheating attempt. If you lose all 10 points, you will fail and be removed from the testing area. Begin. Pencils were scraping against the desks the moment he finished. Naruto noticed that 2 teams were answering questions faster than he expected. They had to be plants. Naruto looked at his test and cringed. There was no way he could answer these types of questions, they were beyond what genin were capable of. Naruto sighed, until, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to find that Hinata was sitting next to him. If why you want, you can see copy my answers. Hinata slowly edged the paper. When the paper was almost to him, Naruto sent a small amount of chakra that made Hinata stop. She looked at Naruto to see him shaking his head. Hinata nodded, but was obviously upset she couldn't help. Naruto looked at his test again. How could he possibly answer these questions? Naruto sighed, but his attention was caught by a small beetle that released an odd aura. He looked to see that the beetle was making scratches in the table that only caught his attention. He watched as the message became clearer. Brother, I know you are having trouble, so I sent a Yuki-charged centipede to give you some assistance. Only you and our brethren will be able to see it, and our brethren will not betray each other, no matter the circumstances. Sincerely, Fu, Jinchūriki of the Shichibi no Kabutomushi. Naruto smiled as the centipede began writing out the answers. He smiled as he began writing down the answers that the demonic centipede wrote them. He finished writing the answers and decided to kick back as the centipede crawled back to its master. Fu was pleased that her pet managed to help her brother. She and the Shichibi discussed that it would be beneficial for her to help her brethren, even if it meant betraying her village. She sent a small ant towards another one of her brethren that she thought was having trouble. By the end of the 45 minutes, many teams had been removed, leaving all the Jinchūriki teams and a few non-Jinchūriki teams to their own. All that was left was the 10th question. Ibiki was surprised that so many had managed to get this far. He was inwardly smiling. The next test would cut their numbers at least in half. Alright, listen up. You may have answered the first 9 questions, but the 10th question is harder than all of them. Although a few rules will be placed beforehand. Ibiki waited for the genin to quiet down before he continued. The 10th question, you have a choice to take it or not, but if you refuse to take it, then you will automatically fail, and not be allowed to take the exams until next time. Temari from the Suna team stood up. Then why wouldn't we take it? Ibiki gained a dark smirk as he answered. Because if you take the question and fail it, you will never be allowed to take the Chunin exams ever again. Ibiki was amused at their reactions. He watched as a few caved in, leaving on 26 teams left. The reaction from one of them definitely surprised him. You fools, do you honestly think he has the power to forbid you all from taking the Chunin exams in other nations? No man, no cage, has that authority. The statement was from the one known as Utakata, and besides, rank means nothing in the shinobi world, especially in mission. Everyone was confused, until the Kumo Kunoichi spoke. If you are given a mission, and you are afraid, do you deny it and live another day? The next one to speak was the one known as Fu. If we are afraid, do we surrender? The Ronin Amaru continued. Or do we persevere? All the Jinchūriki turned towards Naruto. Well, brother. Everyone turned to see that the blonde had a massive smirk on his face. Of course not, my dear siblings. Naruto stood up, releasing an intimidating yet inspiring aura. If we are asked to do something, we do it. If we see an objective, we complete it. If there is risk of death, we die for our goals. Otherwise, we would not be shinobi. Anyone who thinks otherwise is either foolish or stupid if they call themselves shinobi. Naruto smirked as the large man scowled. Is that your answer? Are you willing to risk everything just to pass an exam? Everyone nodded their heads, causing the man to smirk. Then you all pass. Everyone cheered. The Jinchūriki looked at each other with smiles. They got up, but frowned as they saw a black ball heading for the window. Duck and cover. Everyone dropped down as a black ball crashed through the window. It unfurled to reveal a banner with a scantily clad kunoichi with purple pineapple shaper hair. All right, maggots. I am Mitarashi Anko. Welcome to hell. Anko, you're early again. Anko blushed until she saw the genin. Ibiki, she said in a playful scolding manner, are you getting soft on me? Ibiki smiled at the kunoichi. No, we just have one hell of a crop this year. Anko smiled at that. Well then, it looks like it will be fun to cut their numbers in half then. Alright everyone, follow me. She screamed the last part as she jumped from the window, forgetting that she was on the third floor. Crunch. www. On second thought. She spoke in a pain-filled voice, just come to Area 44, tomorrow. Everyone sighed as they left the room and headed for their hotels. Naruto had a severe irritation in his nose the moment that woman entered the room. He felt the undescribed urge to her for some reason, yet something about her seemed familiar, as if he has seen her before. The one called Kurabi was having the same issue. He decided to ignore it and proceeded to walk out the door, until a bug flew on his hand. He watched as it etched a message into his skin. Meet at midnight at the northern gate. We have much to discuss with our brethren, Fu. Naruto sighed and looked to see that the Jinchūriki were nodding. He nodded back as he walked out the door, unaware that a certain white-eyed heiress was watching him. Hinata watched the exchange between the two. She watched as the insect etched marks into Naruto's skin. For some reason no marks appeared, but her Byakugan was sharp enough that she could trace the faint movements in the insect's movements. She decided to follow Naruto, afraid of what might happen to the only person she loved besides her mother. Midnight. Northern Gate. Naruto walked to the northern gate as per the instructions. He made sure he had a weapon at the ready just in case he needed to defend himself. When he got there he saw that the 9 individuals who he felt the familiar aura from gathered there. He suspected that they were all Jinchūriki and wondered what was going on. When he got there the Kumo Kunoichi smiled at him. Ah, brother, you're here. Naruto smiled at his sister, if that was the best way to put it. Hello sister. By any chance, may I know the name of my brethren? The woman smiled as she introduced herself. My name is ni Yugito, Jinchūriki of the Nibi no Baraneko. The large Kumo man next to her answered next. Kurabi, Jinchūriki of the Hachibi no Kyogyu. The 2 Iwa shinobi stepped forwards. The large samurai spoke first. Han, Jinchūriki of the Gobi no Irakauma. The other Iwa shinobi with the red mark on his face spoke next. Roshi, Jinchūriki of the Yonbi no Suru. The 2 remaining kunoichi walked up. The redhead spoke up. Amaru, Jinchūriki of the Ribi no Manharu. The other kunoichi with greenish hair came forwards. Fu, Jinchūriki of the Shichibi no Kabutomushi. The 2 Kiri ninja came forwards. The man that introduced himself before spoke up. Yugura, Jinchūriki of the Sanbi no Kyodai game. The black-haired man with a charming disposition came forwards with his bubble pipe. I am Utakata, Jinchūriki of the Rokubi no Namakuji. Naruto watched as Gaara came forwards. My name is Sabaku no Gaara, Jinchūriki of the Aikibi no Shukaku. Everyone turned their head towards Naruto. They all gave him a stern glance. It was not cruel, but it was more expecting. Naruto sighed as he took a step forwards. He puffed out his chest and declared with pride. I am Uzumaki Naruto, and I am the Jinchūriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Everyone smiled as they held out their hands and brought them together. they began charging their chakra into the point where they were all touching. Naruto saw this and joined in. He began flooding the area with chakra as they were pulled into the Biju mindscape. The Jinchūriki siblings stared at Kyuubi, shocked at what he had just said. The Juubi. Are you serious, Kyuubi? Utakata shouted, completely shocking his friend Yugura. He was normally very calm, but then again the idea of becoming the Jubi was probably too much to handle. Naruto was actually stuttering, trying to respond to what his Biju had said. Gaara was actually twitching with shock. Yugito had dinner plate eyes. Yugura's jaw was wide open. Han and Roshi were trying to support each other from being so shocked. Fu was speaking in random gibberish, not being able to form coherent words. Utakata was hyperventilating. Amaru dropped her medical scalpel, and Kurabi was trying, and failing, to rap out a response. Kyuubi smiled at the reactions. Yes, did I stutter? One of you will surpass the others and become the Jubi, but there is a process that must be adhered to before any of you can become the Jubi. Everyone, including the Biju, looked at Kyuubi. Kyuubi, Sama. Kyuubi looked to his surprise to see Naruto actually calm. What is the importance of the Jubi? The Biju looked irritated for a minute. One of the Biju even shouted their feelings. You insolent ninjin, the Jubi is the greatest title anyone could ever ask for. How dare you ask its importance? I should. Sanbi's rant was cut off by Nibby smashing her flaming tails in front of the massive turtle. Be silent, Sanbi. Ninjin have no knowledge of our systems of command, so it is not surprising that he would ask its importance. Sanbi looked down, realizing he had overreacted, again. He looked at Naruto and bowed his head. Naruto, forgive me, I overreacted. Naruto looked at the Sanbi and smiled. All is forgiven, but I have a question. Could you possibly tell us of your demonic ranking system? I just want to know so that I don't show disrespect in the future. The Biju looked at Naruto in confusion, but it quickly turned to glee that a ninjin wanted to know of their ranking system, especially given the hateful prejudice towards their race. Kyuubi stepped forwards and smiled. It is no trouble, Naruto. The demon ranking system has long since been forgotten by ninjin, and we have no problem explaining to you what the actual rankings are. Kyuubi sighed as he lay down. You might want to get comfortable. Our history is extensive, even to the most devoted scholars. The Biju and Jinchuriki sat down, seats forming under them that they imagined up. Kyuubi turned towards his brethren and nodded his head before he began speaking. The rank of Biju is as old as the third demon era. We are in the fifth era. It was created when the old demon lords began vying for power. Wars broke out that sent nations, empires, innocents, into the pages of histories. The leader of the demons felt that one supreme lord cannot keep all of them in check. So in his efforts to bring about peace he created a new caste system of 12 lords, with the demon imperial leading the group. The 11 Biju would rule over their given territories, while the imperial would keep the loose ends in check. He chose to signify the rankings through number of tails, with the Ribi being of lowest ranking, while the Jubi held the highest ranking. For the first era the title of Biju was a status that was highly honored amongst our kind, even the most noble of the demon clans showing reverence to the Biju. However, during the reign of the fourth demon imperial, the status of Biju became an inherited icon, rather than an earned icon as the lord before him intended. The rank of Biju became passed down through the clans of the noble families that honored the fourth lord. The clans that honored him were the noble families of the frog, snake, badger, dog, weasel, rooster, shark, bee, bat, and fallen dragon clans. The title of Biju was inherited in the strongest member of each of these clans for over 4,000 years. Those that viewed this as a direct denial of the 3D Lord's plan, were quickly executed. Over time the title of Biju was a title that only those of those 10 noble families could have, and each member of the clan received the same title as the one before them, no matter the difference in power. One day, I and my brethren, referring to the Biju, decided it was time that the title of Biju had to be removed from inheritance. So we spent over 1,000 years training, along with a young demon prince of one of the noble clans to take down the current Biju, as well as the ruling lord. We gathered the forces of our clans and brought our armies against the ruling lords, crushing all opposition in our path. We defeated the leading Biju and ended the reign of the demon king himself. The final blow was struck by our longtime friend, the last member of a noble family that the demon king had slaughtered without mercy. For over 1,000 years we ruled in peace alongside our clans. However, disaster struck when the Hachibi of the Fourth Reign killed our leader, the Jubi no Ukami. She was giving birth to her newborn pup, when the Yamato no Orikid her, and devoured her child. Kyubi began to dig his claws into the ground, letting a few tears fall from his eyes. How could a member of a clan that preached that the weak must be protected a defenseless mother and her pup in cold blood? Kyubi released a substantial amount of intent, knocking most of the Biju and all of the Jinchūriki back. He noticed that they were all quivering in fear. He quickly let up his intent as he let a sad sigh escape his breath. Forgive me, it's just that we all dearly cared for our departed leader. Even the Fifth Lord was hard-pressed to move on from her death. Kyubi sighed. Anyways, demonic ranking system is basically the Imperial Lord ruling everything while the Biju cover the smaller details while directly reporting back to them. When the Jubi died there was a rift in power. With the death of the Jubi I had to take command, but since I was not strong enough I could not take the title of Jubi myself, but our Lord came up with a plan. Every one of the Jinchūriki listened intently at this point. Our Lord realized that humans, while physically frail, demonstrated qualities that would allow them the capabilities to grow strong. However, the Demon Lord could not leave our kingdom to find a human worthy of the title, so we went, and allowed ourselves to be sealed into Ninjin, hoping that either the Ninjin would be worthy, or we would find a Ninjin worthy from the Ninjin's eyes. However, we could only be sealed a few times, depending on our levels of power. I can only be sealed once, while Ribi can be sealed a number of times. We spent 300 years searching for a worthy Ninjin to become the Jubi. When we were all put into Jinchūriki it presented an opportunity. We decided that the strongest of our hosts would become the Jubi, and our Lord did not disagree. Naruto nodded along with the other Jinchūriki. Kyubi smiled and then immediately became serious. Our time is up. You all must return to the real world. If you have questions just meditate until your Biju comes before you. The Jinchūriki phased away in a mirage pattern and returned to their world. The Biju also phased out, leaving Kyubi alone. Kyubi quickly used his claws to reach behind him. He then dragged the paw right in front of him and turned it over so that a massive black claw was sitting in his paw. Yurufu-chan, Kyubi placed the claw over his heart as he phased out, a single tear flowing from his eye. Next day, Forest of Death. Naruto arrived to the Forest of Death an hour early along with his brethren. He looked around and saw that everyone else was arriving. He looked around for his teammates to find them walking up to him. Naruto watched as the two walked up to him in total fear. Hey guys, hope you two are ready for this. The two nervously nodded, to which Naruto simply rolled his eyes. He turned towards Anko, who seemed to still be limping a bit, but otherwise she was okay. He noticed that Kurabi was glaring at her. He himself found himself wanting to attack her for some reason, but something about her just kept him from attacking her. Alright maggots, this is the Forest of Death. You won't find a deadlier forest here in Konoha. This is where many of you will die, so I am going to have to ask you to sign these waiver, cause I really don't want to have to deal with the paperwork. Anko smiled as Naruto scoffed. I don't need to sign anything, cause no one will care if I die. Anko let a sad look cross her eyes, but snuffed it out with a sadistic smirk. She quickly shunshined behind Naruto and placed a kunai at his throat. Anko whispered into his ear. You're wrong, people do care. Naruto let a bit of shock cross his features, but quickly snuffed it out as he pulled out a kunai and stopped a kunai that was coming for Anko's throat. He looked at who it was that had the kunai, and was filled with a murderous intent 100 times worse than when he was around Anko. He even heard Kyuubi become agitated. He was screaming for him, but he wasn't able to understand what Kyuubi was saying. Anko looked at the grass nin behind her and let a sadistic smirk touch her features. I would suggest you back off, it could get you ED. The grass nin smiled and backed off. Sorry, I get so excited by violence that I can hardly control myself, it won't happen again. Anko smirked at the grass ninja and turned towards the rest of the genin. Alright maggots, get to the tent and get your scroll. After that report to your respective gates, now. The genin scrambled towards the tents to retrieve their scrolls, fearing for their lives. Naruto went to get his scroll when he bumped into someone. He fell right onto Hi-san, looked to find that he had bumped into Hinata. Hinata quickly turned around. Confused and afraid, what should I do? I can't tell anyone or I could ruin Naruto's life, but what if Naruto has been taken over by Kyuubi? Then is the Naruto I know truly Kyuubi? But I fell in love with who he is, not his name, so why should it matter? But still, Hinata was confused as to her feelings towards the blonde. She wanted to talk to someone, see if she could make the right choice, but she was afraid to ruin Naruto's life. Naruto meanwhile was gathering with his team at the gate. Sakura and Sasuke were talking quietly so as to make sure Naruto does not hear them. Sasuke-kun, what should we do? We don't know if Naruto is the Kyuubi or if he contains it. It is too dangerous to be with him right now. Sasuke sighed as he pondered the fangirl's words. I know, but we need all three of our teammates to pass this exam, and if worse comes to worse, we can just him, Kyuubi or not, he is still the Dobi. Sakura smiled at her, Sasuke-kun's logic. Oh Sasuke-kun, you always come up with the best plans. Hey, after this could we go on a? Sakura started. No. Sasuke turned around and walked towards the gates as the signal to begin was sent. Sakura quickly ran after the two who were already running through the forest, unaware that the grass nin from before was watching their movement. The grass nin had a devious smirk on his face. He watched as his prey entered the forest. Soon, Sasuke-kun, I will have your body, and it will be one more slap into the face of my old nemesis, using the bloodline he created as my power. The grass nin jumped into the forest as his two subordinates scattered, leaving behind trails of skin as they left, skin like a snake's. With Naruto. Naruto was leaping through the trees with his two teammates following him. He became extremely edgy when he saw Sasuke looking at him with that same look the villagers gave him, hateful fear. It didn't matter to him. He just made sure he had some of his new shuriken. He spent weeks working on them and he finally finished them last night. Naruto jumped over another branch and stopped on a branch before he gave a hand sign for them to stop. Sasuke and Sakura quickly stopped. Sasuke readied a kunai while Sakura pulled out a kunai Kakashi gave her. It was a double-blade kunai. Naruto began sniffing the air. He looked around as he smelt a odd, familiar stench. He continued sniffing as he began walking over the tree. Naruto walked around the tree as his teammates watched him with curiosity. He walked all over the tree, but stopped when he hit the end of the massive branch. He continued sniffing and looked down. His eyes widened with terror and snapped his head towards his teammates. Run! Naruto jumped out of the way as a massive set of reptilian jaws closed down on the branch where Naruto was standing. Naruto slammed into Sasuke and Sakura, and with a bit of newfound strength thanks to Kyuubi, he jumped to a different branch while carrying his two teammates. He landed on a branch and snapped his head towards the place where he was standing to find a massive snake. The creature had a narrow jaw and had teeth the size of a long kunai. It had a silver eye with a black slit. The scales looked like massive blades that could cut through the undergrowth. The snake snapped its head towards the three and smiled. The snake was actually smiling at them as it coiled itself around the branch. Naruto got a good look at it and guessed that the snake was about 120 to 135 feet long. It was brown in color with black scar-like markings all over its body. The snake had what looked like a sharpened edge on its tail. Naruto stood his ground as the snake rose itself. Well, what have we here? The Jinchūriki of my master's rival, how fortuitous of me. The snake hissed out in a distinctly female voice. Naruto's eyes went to the size of dinner plates. This thing talked. What the hell are you? Who the hell are you? Naruto pulled out a kunai he had been working on and got ready to attack the snake. The snake chuckled as she answered. Oh, who am I? I am Stinthos. Stinthos launched herself at Naruto and his team. Naruto quickly threw the kunai in her mouth and grabbed his teammates as she curled back in pain. Damn Jinchūriki, you will pay for that. She launched herself at Naruto as he jumped over the incoming snake. She quickly snapped her head towards the blonde who was running down her back. She hissed as she launched herself at the blonde. Naruto smirked as he waited for her jaws to be in range. Stinthos was 100 feet from Naruto when he threw a shuriken at Stinthos. Stinthos paid it no mind and continued her assault. The shuriken then began to click and whir as the blades segmented themselves and launched outwards. They wrapped around Stinthos' mouth and began wrapping around the jaws. Stinthos' eyes widened and she tried to retract, but she found that one of the blades hit a nearby branch. Her eyes widened as Naruto grabbed a blade that landed near him. He smirked as he jumped down as the light hit an invisible string that was directly attached to the shuriken. Stinthos hissed as her head was yanked down and slammed into the side of the tree she was on. Naruto ran around the tree and wrapped the wire around the massive snake. He threw the blade at the tree hard enough to dig it in and jumped back up. He smiled and turned his back, but he froze when he saw another snake right in front of him. The snake quickly opened its jaws and was about to swallow up the blonde. Naruto dodged to the side as the snake clamped its jaw onto the branch he was on. The snake snarled. The snake slammed its jaws down and crushed the branch in its teeth. It turned its head at Naruto and hissed as it opened its mouth, poison dripping from its fangs. Naruto had a single thought running through his head. Oh shit, he quickly turned and ran as the snake charged at him. Naruto opened up his pouch and pulled out a pill. He had spent a week developing it, and he had yet to test it. It was a smoke and poison pill. If he managed to throw this in the right vicinity, he should be able to anyone who breathes in its poison. He quickly threw the pill down the snake's mouth. Naruto watched as the snake continued its assault, then closed his eyes as the snake was about to bite down, but it never came. Naruto looked up to see the snake spasming and screaming. The snake looked towards its stomach as it began to fester and boil until it split right open. Its organs poured out of the wound as the snake's head slammed onto the branch. Dead from an acidic poison. Naruto stared at the snake's head, the fangs still dripping their poison, searing the wood it touched. Naruto slowly backed away as he looked around. He saw no other snakes and got up, but his eyes widened when he felt a buildup of chakra. Shit! He was blown back by a massive shockwave that sent him careening through the trees. Sasuke and Sakura watched as Naruto was shot over their heads as they turned to see the grass nin from before walking through the overgrowth smiling like a predator that has captured its prey. Ah, Sasuke-kun, It's so good to see you. The grass nin jumped at the two as he released a substantial amount of intent, making it so neither of them can move. I can't move. Sasuke struggled as the grass nin continued forwards, readying a final strike. No, I can't end like this. Am I really this pathetic? Sakura watched as the ninja brought out two kunai, both poised to end their lives. The two genin closed their eyes as the kunai were only 3 feet away, but the sound of metal meeting metal broke them out of their trance. They opened their eyes to see the two Iwa ninja from before stopping each of Orochimaru's kunai with their own weapon. The man with the red mark across his face using a battle hammer, while the large man with the furnace on his back used a massive axe. The grass nin did not have time to move as the two buried their fists into his chest. He coughed up some blood as the combined force from the two Jinchūriki's punches sent him careening into a faraway tree. Both Jinchūrikis turned towards Sasuke and Sakura, who are panting from finally being released from the terribling intent. Both of you get out of here, we will not allow our brother's teammates to be harmed, go. The two then jumped to attack the grass nin who is pulling himself out the hole in the tree. Sasuke and Sakura are shocked that the two could manage something so astounding. Sasuke quickly became jealous of their strength, believing he should be the one to have that power. Sakura was too scared to even think. The grass nin finally managed to pull himself out of the tree just in time to move out of the way to avoid Roshi's war hammer. He had to duck to keep Han's axe from beheading him. The two Jinchūriki got into an unfamiliar stance where Roshi was in a crouching stance with his fists connecting with the branch, while Han was towering over him with his arms pointed upwards and his hands in a double knife strike. Bijuten, Yoni no Gobi, Kai. The two were overcome by demonic chakra. Roshi's was a dark red, while Han's was a white color. A single tail of chakra formed behind each of them. Roshi had a monkey tail while Han had what looked like a dolphin tail. The grass nin had a wicked smile cross his features as he began to allow a dark chuckle escape his lips. So, to Jinchūriki, this will be fun. The grass nin grabbed the top of his face, and began to peel it off, allowing his true features to be shown. His skin was as pale as death, he had purple markings under his slitted golden eyes. Allow me to introduce myself, I am Orochimaru. Orochimaru jumped at the two Jinchūriki, but quickly veered beneath them as he passed through their legs. He quickly kicked them in the back, sending the two toppling over each other as he turns towards the still terrified Sasuke. He lets a predatory smile grace his features as he extends his fangs. Sasuke-kun, you are mine. He extends his neck towards Sasuke, ready to clamp down on high neck, claiming him as his own, but Sakura jumps in the way, resulting in his fangs burying themselves in her left. Sakura screams in pain as a curse mark develops on her. Orochimaru pulls away, ripping off her shirt to reveal the mark to become a series of 3 bent bars to Yuya's curse mark. She collapses to the ground as Sasuke runs over to her side. Damn, Sakura, what were you thinking? Sakura groans as the pain shoots through her body. She smiles at Sasuke as she speaks. People do crazy things when they're in love. She passes out as Sasuke tries to revive her. Sakura-chan, damn you monster. Sasuke runs at Orochimaru, who is snarling that he wasted precious enzymes on a worthless female. But he smiles when he sees Sasuke charging at him. Sasuke runs through some hand seals as he throws a few wired shuriken that wrap around the trees and catch onto Orochimaru's arms. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. A fireball the size of a house is blown that covers the wires and begins shooting towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru smiles as he begins to dissolve into mud. Sasuke went wide-eyed as he saw the fireball hit a mud clone. Sasuke froze as he felt a pinch on his neck, which quickly turned into searing pain as a curse mark in the shape of 3 tomos developed on the crook of his neck. He fell to the ground screaming. Orochimaru smiled, but he sneered as he had to dodge a kunai being thrown by Sakura. She had managed to somehow overcome the curse mark and now was partially utilizing it. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued by this development. She survived the curse mark, and is already utilizing it, but how? She is not a Jinchūriki. She has no special qualities such as demon blood or a Kekkei Genkei. She is human, so why is it she can utilize it so quickly after being adhered with it after only a few minutes? Anko could not even use the curse mark when she barely survived it after 3 days. I must capture her and dissect her to see if this can be utilized in others. Orochimaru smiled as he began to reach for her, but he had to jump out of the way as Roshi delivered a punch on the tree he was on, severing the branch. Roshi grabbed Sasuke, who was still keeling over in pain, as Han grabbed Sakura. Let's go, we need to get our brother's comrades out of here, stat. The two jumped into the trees as Orochimaru recovered from the two Jinchūriki's strikes. Damn Jinchūriki, so they want to protect their brother's comrades, so be it, Medusa, take care of him. A shadow slithered away from his own as it went in the direction Naruto was in, and now, for the two I have marked. Orochimaru jumped into the trees after the Jinchūriki and the two he marked. With Naruto. Naruto groaned as he tried to get up. He pulled himself out of the ground where he landed. Looking around, he noticed that he had landed in a swamp. Naruto carefully walked through the swamp so as to not disturb anything in it. He had spent enough time in the forest of death as a kid to know that if you saw anything move, throw kunai first, ask questions later, then throw a kunai at the non-moving things just to be safe. Naruto was about to step on a rock when it slowly began to move. Naruto panicked and used his chakra to jump out of the way. He then questioned why the hell he didn't do that before to get out of the swamp. Naruto watched as the rock revealed itself to be a turtle. The thing was about the size of a large Inuzuka dog and was clearly vegetarian. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, until he felt a hot wind on his neck. He slowly turned around, and his eyes widened as he saw what was behind him. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen in his entire life. The body was snake-like, but it was made up of thousands of smaller snakes ranging from blue, purple, or silver. All of them had a shiny appearance, but the head resembled that of a woman's, but it was snake-like. It had massive fangs that secreted glowing green venom. Naruto watched the drops hit the ground. When it hit a lizard, it seemed to freeze up and stop moving, but the steady rise and fall of its chest showed that it was still alive. Naruto looked into its eyes to see a hypnotic green that seemed to draw him in, calling for him to answer it. Naruto quickly shook it off as the snake, woman, thing, began to chuckle. Hello, Naruto, my master demands your death, and he will have it. Naruto had to jump out of the way as the snake attacked him. He pulled out a few paper bombs and threw them at the snake as it connected to her sides. She screamed as the bombs burned into her flesh. She hissed at him as she launched another attack at him. Die, boy. Naruto reached into his ninja pouch, praying he had something to help him out. He unfortunately found that he had nothing in there to help him. So, this is it. Naruto closed his eyes. He was cornered, he had no weapons, and he had no way to defend himself. He waited for the giant creature to close its mouth on him, but he snapped his eyes open when he heard her scream. He looked to see that the creature had been attacked by what looked like a large worm that had just tunneled out of the ground. It had no eyes, and it had a circular mouth that had thousands of teeth in it. The giant snake creature screamed again. Wretched worms, do you know who I am? I am Medusa, a pathetic leech Yuki will never me. Medusa was about to bite down on the leeches, when a black tendril buried itself in her head. Medusa shot her eye over to where the tendril came from, to find a massive leech demon with a white no mask with the kanji for 0 on it. No, but I can. The leech demon began to convulse, and then shot out hundreds of tendrils that sharpened and went straight for Medusa. Goodbye Medusa, I hope you rot in hell forever. The tendrils buried themselves in Medusa, stabbing every part of her body, leaving no possibility for her to live. The leeches let go of Medusa and then returned to the swamp while the masked leech pulled back its tendrils before it vanished into black mist, revealing Amaru. Amaru saw that Naruto was shocked by her appearance. How are you, brother? She got no response. Brother. She jumped down and noticed a glazed look in his eyes. He must be talking to Kyuubi. Mindscape. Naruto was staring at the enraged Biju in his body. Kyuubi was demanding Naruto give him control over his body. Clearly he was not happy. Naruto, damn it, give me control. This is my fight, and no others. Kyuubi began leaking out a massive amount of chakra that engulfed the blonde. Naruto began convulsing and screaming in pain. I will have my revenge, Yamato no Orochi. Outside of Mindscape, Amaru was blown back by a raw output of Kyuubi's chakra. She slammed into a tree, but her fall was broken by a leech Yuki that came out of the swamp. She watched in fascination as Naruto's skin began to peel off of his body and then burst into black ashes. His spine began to crack as a bunch of tails emerged. Naruto's screams turned into demonic howls as his face became a snout. Finally, a shockwave of chakra rushed over the swamp, setting it ablaze with burning fire. Standing where Naruto was an 8-tailed kitsune, but it had no fur and one could make out the skeletal structure from the tight skin. Amaru began to quiver as Naruto, no Kyuubi took control and ran into the forest. She quickly righted herself and ran after him, praying things would not get out of hand. Kyuubi launched a volley of chakra blasts at the great snake demon only for the snake to weave around them. The main head launched at Kyuubi. Kyuubi caught the open mouth and grabbed the snake's tongue before ripping it clean out. Yamato no Orochi screamed in pain as the head that had the tongue ripped out snarled at him while another head spoke, I'll fillet you for that. The heads then launched at Kyuubi as he ducked and weaved in and out of the strikes. The heads quickly weaved back and bit down trying to hit Kyuubi. Kyuubi managed to run past the heads and managed to grab the tail of the beast. He grabbed it and pulled as hard as he could. Kyuubi then used all of his strength and swung Yamato no Orochi into the trees. He slid through the trees until his body fell into a lake. Kyuubi saw the mile-long trench the throw made and ran towards the lake, several eyes following his movement. In the bushes, Team 8 had just gotten a scroll when they felt a massive pressure of intent. They went to investigate and saw a giant 8-headed snake and an 8-tailed fox that had no fur attack each other. Hinata was quivering, as she used her Byakugan to see that the fox was Naruto. Team 7 and the 2 Iowa Jinchūriki. Sasuke and Sakura were shocked at the ensuing battle. They were even more shocked when they saw Orochimaru become the Yamato no Orochi. Roshi and Han were trying to keep their Bijus under control. They were having little success as both Biju wanted to the Yamato no Orochi. Team 10 and Team Guy. Team 10 had literally run into Guy's team. The two teams were about to duke it out when they felt a massive intent wash over them. Before they could even think, they had to jump out of the way of a massive snake barreling through the forest. They looked again to find a furless 8-tailed fox running down the same path. With some Junins, Anko had immediately run into the forest when the 3 dead faceless bodies turned up in a graveyard. Her friends Kurenai and Yugao followed her as well as Kakashi, Asuma, Guy, and Hayate. When they finally found Orochimaru, they were about to launch their strongest attacks to him, but they stopped when they saw the massive 8-tailed furless fox declare that Orochimaru was the Yamato no Orochi. When they saw the snake Sanin transform, they were terrified, Anko was scared stiff and everyone else was too scared to move, but Anko grinned when the fox literally threw Orochimaru, Yamato no Orochi, or whatever he was now, into a forest and then finally into a lake. They decided to sit back and watch the show, and prayed that the snake Sanin would die. Back with Yamato no Orochi. Yamato no Orochi shook himself off as his body went underwater. He hissed and then began to swim up to the surface. When he finally breached the water, he had to swiftly veer to the right as a beam of pure red chakra was launched at him. He looked to see that Kyuubi was releasing as much of his Yuki as his host could handle. Yamato no Orochi smirked, thinking that this could be an advantage. So Kyuubi, you want to me? Well, unless your host can endure all 9 tails of your power, that's not going to happen. I may have been the Hachibi, but my power is equal to yours, now die. Yamato no Orochi opened all of his mouths as he began charging purple energy through his mouths. Kyuubi saw this and then hunched down as he gripped the ground. He began charging up a mass of red energy as he readied his strike. The 2 demons then reared back as they mentally cried out their attacks. Hubby Hachiketa, Kitsune Doriru. The 2 fired out their attacks. Yamato no Orochi's strike tore through the air and sent shockwaves that knocked down the surrounding trees. Kyuubi's strike tore through the earth and sent spider web cracks throughout the landscape. The 2 attacks collided, boom, and sent a massive shockwave that tore through the forest like a rhino through wet paper. All the teams had to duck and cover as the strikes knocked down most of the forest, taking down half the teams instantly. The teams that had been watching the fight were trembling. They had been the closest and so they felt the demonic energy. It was massive. Yamato no Orochi was not kidding. His power had to have equaled Kyuubi's at least for the attack from Kyuubi not to overcome his own. Hinata was trembling in fear. Was this really her Naruto-kun? Anko was frozen with fear until her curse seal suddenly began acting up. Aaggh. Kakashi quickly ran over to her and tried to get her up, but he was frozen when another blast of intent washed over him. Kyuubi ran at Yamato no Orochi as the great snake pulled himself out of the water. Die snake bastard. Yamato no Orochi had no time to dodge Kyuubi's attack and ended up getting slashed by one of his claws across his eyes. Ah, damn fox, that's it, I am going to you just like wide your precious Urufu-chan. He then reared his head back and widened his mouth as the fabled Kusanagi erupted from his mouth. The snake closed his jaw as the blade extended. Yamato no Orochi swung the sword at the shocked Kyuubi. When Kyuubi saw the sword, his mind wandered back to the day his love was murdered. Flashback. Kyuubi was returning home from running several errands for his mate. She was in heat but she needed to take care of their child. He had gone to the city to retrieve some lamb meat and a new batch of herbs. The 2 had grown up together, and after she claimed the title of Jubi and he gained the title of Kyuubi, the 2 married. After 9 months of waiting they had a beautiful cub to call their own. Kyuubi turned the corner to the grove that he and his mate lived in, when he smelt snake. He quickly looked around as he continued sniffing around. He found the scent to see that it continued down the path towards their home. Oh Kami-sama no. Kyuubi quickly ran towards the field that had their home. He looked to find that the field had been trampled by a serpentine creature, but not just any snake. Kyuubi was horrified. He quickly ran towards the home. He was about to enter the home when he heard a scream of pain. He willed himself to run faster. Once he reached the door he opened it, to be greeted with the most mortifying sight he had ever seen. Standing in the room was the Yamato no Orochi, in all his human glory, holding his child by his tail. His cub was squealing in pain as Yamato no Orochi turned his head towards Kyuubi, a sadistic smirk on his face. Hey, Kyuubi, it's been so long, hasn't it? I see you haven't aged a day. I however do not have that luxury anymore. Not since your mate ripped my orb of immortality from my chest and then crushed it beneath her paw. Had she not done that, I would have defeated the rest of your pitiful resistance. Yamato no Orochi smirked as he looked at the squealing Woolx kid. But, I found another way to become immortal. Kyuubi snarled at Yamato no Orochi, release my child, you snake. He jumped at the fallen Hachibi, but stopped in midair when he saw that he had his sword poised at his mate's heart. Ah, I see you are still soft. Yamato no Orochi sighed as he shook his head, how particularly mortal of you. Yamato no Orochi turned his gaze towards Kyuubi. You were weakened before you started. A sadistic gleam crossed his features, by compassion. Yamato no Orochi drove the kusanagi into Yurufu's heart and ripped it from her side. No. Kyuubi launched himself at Yamato no Orochi but was batted aside by the snake demon and flung into a wall. How the mighty have fallen. Now, he turned towards the cub in his hands. Oh, that's right, devouring your child, ha 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 ha. Yamato no Orochi's head changed into that of a snake and bit down, swallowing the cub whole. Kyuubi watched in horror as his child was devoured. Yamato no Orochi, you bastard. Kyuubi charged at Yamato no Orochi, but a sudden influx of Yuki slammed him into the wall. The last thing he saw was Yamato no Orochi changing right before his eyes before darkness claimed him. Kyuubi groggily awoke to a smoking ruin. He snapped his eyes open when he remembered what happened. He used his strength to remove the burning debris from his body. He quickly looked around. He began to radiating intent. His home, his territory, it was burned right down to the soil. Nothing could ever grow here again. Kyuubi was about to head after Yamato no Orochi when he saw a limp form in the debris. He quickly ran over to find his mate, just barely breathing. Yurufu-chan, my love, I am so sorry. He began to sob into his mate's form when she opened her eyes. Kitsu-kun, you have nothing to be sorry for. Kyuubi snapped his head up when he heard his wife speak. Yurufu-chan, please don't leave me. The wolf demoness smiled as she grabbed her necklace before she quickly ripped it off. She placed it to Kyuubi's hand and squeezed it shut. Goodbye, my dear Kitsunji. Her body went limp as her last breath left her lips. Kitsunji tried to revive her. Yurufu-chan, Yurufu-chan, you are Ufu-chan. He screamed to the heavens as he sobbed into his wife's dead form. Not even a moment later he released such a massive amount of Yuki that it sent a shockwave throughout the valley. Kitsunji reared his head back as he yelled to the heavens, Yamato no Orochi, I loved her and you took her from me. Kitsunji sliced his hand with the necklace his mate gave him. Today I make a new vow, I will spend the rest of my life, hunting you down. Kitsunji's proclamation was heard throughout his territory. The kitsune fled in fear of the angry kitsune, and pitied anyone that got in his way. End flashback. Kitsunji snarled as he remembered his promise. It was the only promise he made to anyone except for his wife, his dear Yurufu-chan, and it was a promise he would see accomplished. Die. Yamato no Orochi was about to drive the sword into Kyuubi's heart. Clang. But his eyes widened when he saw Kyuubi stop the sword with his bare hands. Yamato no Orochi was about to try and strike again when Kyuubi lashed one of his tails out and slashed him across another one of his eyes. Ah! Kyuubi grabbed the blade as tight as he could and threw the snake Yuki into the forest. He slid through the forest creating another massive trench. The ones who were watching the fight saw the incoming snake demon and fled. Incoming, everyone scattered as quickly as they could, but Team 8 was not quite as lucky. Kiba and Shino were avoiding the incoming debris, but Hinata fell behind as a tree branch came towards them. Shino and Kiba were knocked unconscious but Hinata was pinned under the tree, right next to where the Yamato no Orochi landed. Yamato no Orochi ripped his way out of the trees and hissed at the fox, "You will pay for that, fox shit, aaggghh." He launched his primary head at Kyuubi with his jaws wide and venom dripping. If Kyuubi got even an ounce of that venom in his system while he was sealed, he would be severely ill, or die. Kyuubi saw the incoming attack and grabbed the snake's jaws before they could clamp down on him. Yamato no Orochi snarled as all of his other heads were pinned too much to offer him any assistance, but his eyes widened when one of his heads caught sight of a pinned down Hyuga. He smiled in satisfaction. She is clearly an innocent soul, pure and just. I can see it in her eyes. If I eat her, I will grow even stronger. He wasted no time as the closest head finally freed itself from the rubble and launched at Hinata, who finally saw the snake. Her eyes widened in terror as the snake's fangs dripped their poison. I am going to die. She closed her eyes and awaited her fate. Kyuubi caught sight of this, but he was so enamored with Yamato no Orochi that he didn't care if she died, so long as he took down Yamato no Orochi. He was about to charge up a strong ball, when he felt a pressure bearing down on his mind, and heard the voice of his container. Hinata-chan. Kyuubi's eyes widened as Naruto began struggling to take back control. Mindscape. The gates that held Kyuubi opened and began pulling in Kyuubi with a massive wind. Kyuubi was clawing at the ground while screaming in rage, Naruto, damn it, what are you doing? I have to that demon now. Naruto walked out of the corner where he was standing and glared at the Kyuubi. I have to save Hinata, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. He turned around as Kyuubi was pulled fully into his cage as the gates closed, screaming for revenge. Back outside, Naruto gains control of Kyuubi and stops powering up a strong ball. He notices how close the fangs are to him and he basically throws the primary head to the side and then runs to stop the other head from Hinata. Hinata watches as the head is about to close down on her and then closes her eyes as a single thought goes through her head, I didn't even get to tell Naruto-kun how I feel. She waits for the inevitable as she hears the sound of piercing flesh, but she felt no pain. She quickly opens her eyes to find the fangs not even an inch away from her. She was confused, but she was shocked out of her stupor when she saw the blood flowing down the massive fangs. She slowly looks up and is shocked to see Naruto, still in his eight-tailed state, but replacing the red eyes was the usual cerulean blue she loved so much. Naruto flinched in pain and then screamed in agony as Yamato no Orochi ripped his fangs from the Jinchūriki-demon as he went back to being the same old Naruto. Yamato no Orochi began twisting in pain as his body shattered like glass and in the place of where his body was pinned was the snake Sannin Orochimaru. Orochimaru cringed in pain as he pulled himself from the rubble. So, you still live, no matter. My venom will you soon enough, Jinchūriki of Kitsunji. He had a wicked smile as he turned his head towards the direction he sensed Sasuke and Sakura thanks to the curse marks on their body, but first, I must acquire my new test subjects. Orochimaru walked off as Hinata finally freed herself from the tree that was pinning her and ran over to the poisoned and bleeding Naruto. Naruto-kun, please don't die, please, I love you. Naruto did not make any sign of movement except for the steady fall and rise of his chest which was quickly becoming erratic. She rummaged through her pouch and pulled out a medicinal cream she had been working on. Kami, please let this work. She pulled out as much of the cream as she could and began coating Naruto's open wound. She saw some of the cream begin to eat away at the leftover poison, so there was the chance that it was working, but Naruto's wound did not heal in the slightest. She began running through what medical jutsu she knew and tried to heal his wound. Orochimaru had since found Sasuke and Sakura. Sakura was barely standing while Sasuke was still in pain from the curse mark. He smiled at how easy this was going to be. Looks like Sasuke can't stand the curse mark as easily as you can, wench. Sakura ran at Orochimaru with a kunai. but Orochimaru simply grabbed her shirt and threw her to the ground, ripping off almost all of her upper clothing, revealing her upper body, and the curse mark as well. The curse mark has a 1 in 10 chance of survival, and if you do survive it you will be unconscious for a few days before you are even capable of even activating it, yet not only do you survive it, you also manage to activate and use its power not even a minute after application. He grabbed Sakura by the throat. The question is why? Why is it that someone so pathetic, one who shows no qualities of a bloodline, demon blood, or any other great qualities besides an extremely low chakra pool, can survive such a mark? Orochimaru pulled out a syringe. I guess I will just have to study you to find out. Just as he was about to plunge the syringe into Sakura's body, a kunai plunged into his arm. Ah! He looked up to find Anko glaring at him. He smiled in anticipation as he saw his dear apprentice. Ah! Anko-chan, I see your aim has gotten better. He threw Sakura to the ground as he pulled the kunai out of his arm. He then ran up the tree at Anko as he drew a kunai at his old apprentice. But what about your knife skills? Anko blocked an incoming strike from the snake Sanin, fallen Hachibi, as he began using his snake jutsu to gain the upper hand. Damn snake shit, I will you for what you have done to me. She threw a kunai with an explosive note on it as she sent a volley of snakes at Orochimaru. He quickly held up a hand sign as the snakes quickly stopped their assault. They then turned their attention to Anko and attacked. She was about to dispel them, but they wrapped around her and kept her from performing a single hand sign. Kuku, I don't think so, Anko-chan. I am the Lord of Snakes, no matter if I am a Biju or not. The Snake Clan serves me. Anko struggled as she cursed Orochimaru. Damning snake shit, I am going to you piece of shit. Orochimaru chuckled and then went into roaring laughter. How humorous. Orochimaru reached for Anko, causing her to flinch. Are you going to me? If so, just do it, you ing shit. Orochimaru began to chuckle again. Oh Anko, what makes you think that I would my own daughter? A look of horror crossed Anko's features as Orochimaru's statement met her ears. What? You're lying. Orochimaru began to chuckle as he stroked Anko's cheek. Now Anko, what could I possibly gain from lying to you, my dear daughter? Orochimaru walked back over to Sakura and plunged the syringe in her stomach. Your interference cost me a potential test subject, but I guess her blood will do just fine. Oh, don't worry Anko, I won't hurt. What point would there be in a potential host? Orochimaru threw Sakura to the ground as he performed a set of hand seals. His body caught flame as he disappeared. Goodbye, my daughter. He disappeared along with the vial in his hands, leaving Anko in shock. Anko was wide-eyed. Her sensei was her father. If that was the case, then why was she alone? Her mother had banished her from the Mitarashi clan when she returned from being kidnapped from Sea Country, all because she had the curse mark, mother. She hated that woman above all other people. She was banished from the clan because of something she had no say in. Anko began to weep. She had always wondered who her father was, and now that she knew she wanted to die, her mother had forsaken her, and her father was the cause of it. She wept as the other Junin surrounded her. Kurenai ran to her longtime friend and tried to comfort her. Shish, it's alright Anko-chan, it's alright. Meanwhile across the clearing Hinata was weeping for Naruto, who was slowly dying from Yamato no Orochi's poison. She had flooded the wound with healing chakra, but since the wound was made from demonic energies it was too damn hard to heal for human medical techniques. No, please Kami-sama no. Hinata had exhausted herself of all her medical techniques. She had so little chakra left that it hurt to try and use more. She was about to try another medical technique when her hand was grabbed. She looked up to find Amaru grabbing her hands. You do one more medical technique, you will die. She let go of Hinata's arm and pulled out a medical bag. She began rummaging through it and pulled out various creams that emanated a weird aura. I have to say I am impressed. Not many humans that have had no contact with a demon can claim to have made a cream that can quell a demon's poison, much less a Biju class demon. She pulled out a glowing cream that she smoothed over Naruto's open wound. It began to sizzle and fizz, and then finally the wound began to repair itself. The bones began to regrow as the flesh began to grow back in the wound until finally the wound closed up. Amaru sighed as she rummaged through her bag. She smiled when she found what she was looking for. She pulled out a vial of extremely small black balls that looked like soldier pills. She opened the vial and gave one to Hinata. Here, it will replenish your chakra and eliminate any poison that may have gotten into your system. You may not have been bitten by that damn snake, but you were in the proximity of the venom. You may have breathed in some of the airborne toxins. Hinata took the pill and quickly bit down on it. She immediately felt her chakra replenish as well as her wounds heal up. She cringed when she felt her wounds heal as they felt like white-hot fire. Amaru smiled at Hinata and began to lift up Naruto. We better find yours and his teammates soon. We still have 4 days to get to the tower. Oh. She reached back into her pouch and pulled out 2 heaven scrolls and 2 earth scrolls. I pilfered these from a few dead teams on the way. Naruto and that snake's fight did a lot more damage than I thought. Hinata looked around and realized how destroyed the forest was. The two had only fought for a total of 2 or 3 minutes, and they already did this much damage. Over half the forest was destroyed. Amaru carried Naruto over to his teammates who were being surrounded by Junin. Hinata walked over to the now conscious Shino and Kiba. Hinata began applying ointment to Kiba's large gash. Shino was using the ointment to get his chest. Gee, thanks Hinata. I don't know what we would do without you. Kiba smiled as Hinata blushed at the praise. She turned around to see Naruto helping Sakura up to her feet and her mood dropped. Kiba saw this and sighed. Hinata, you either have to tell him how you feel or move on, because he isn't going to wait forever. Hinata looked down at the ground at Kiba's statement. I know, but what if he rejects me? Hinata began to cry a little bit. She had confessed to Naruto, but he was so close to death he probably didn't hear it. Kiba sighed as he looked at his old friend. He prayed that she fesses up soon. Cause at some point Naruto would find someone else, and he couldn't bear to see his surrogate sister cry. Kiba looked at Naruto. Where the hell did he come from? The last thing he remembered was a massive 8-headed snake and an 8-tailed fox fighting, but where did the two things go? He decided to figure this out later as him and his team took the scrolls and headed off to the tower. Naruto was helping Sakura to her feet when he noticed that she had lost most of her shirt. He blushed and quickly turned away. He may no longer have a crush on the Banshee, but he was still a guy. A nearby Junin produced a cloak that she could wear until she got some actual clothes. The team was about to set off when a Junin placed the point of his katana at Naruto's throat. What happened here, demon? Naruto glared at the man as Amaru knocked the sword out of the way. Back off. He is no more a demon as a scroll as the kunai it is sealed in. The Junin sneered at Amaru as he pointed the katana back at Naruto. You dare defend the Kyuubi? I should you where you stand, demon lover. The Junin raised his katana to cut her down, but he was stopped by another katana entering his back and cutting through his heart. The man had enough energy left in him to look behind him to see Gecko Hayate with a severe glare. You broke the law, Genji. Sorry, my old friend. Hayate cut Genji in half as Sakura and Sasuke trembled in fear while Naruto merely looked sick. Amaru only sighed as she handed Naruto a heaven and earth scroll. Team 7 got cleaned up and set off for the tower while the Junin searched the forest for the snake Sanin, fallen Hachibi. 5 days later, the teams that passed the finals had all gathered in the exam room. At first the Hokage was planning to cancel the exams, but with Orochimaru's threat to destroy the village they had no choice but to agree to continue the exams. The only remaining teams were Team 7, 8, 10, that veteran Genin team, Kabuto's team, the Kumo team, the Iwa team, Amaru, the team from Kiri, the Takigakure team, as well as the Suna and Sound teams. Anko was shocked with how many made it out of the forest, especially with the Biju battle in the middle of it. The Hokage stepped forwards. All right, the board will show the contestants. If anyone wishes to drop out, now would be the time. At the Hokage's statement, most of the competition dropped out. The only people who didn't drop out were Team 7, Team 8, the veteran Genin team, Kabuto's teammates, and all the Jinchūriki as well as the Sound team. Hayate jumped to the floor as the board began running through the names. Once the board stopped, it revealed the first two competitors. Tsuchi-kin, Amaru. Amaru smiled as Kin gained a sadistic grin on her face. The two kunoichi got to the floor as Hayate called the match. The match between Tsuchi-kin and Amaru, Hajime. Kin immediately ran at Amaru and threw a bunch of senbon with bells on them. Amaru pulled out her scalpel and blocked each bell while simultaneously cutting them in half. Kin snarled as she ripped out a kunai and threw it at Amaru. Said kunoichi expertly caught the projectile before it could even reach her and threw it back. Kin did a backflip as she caught the knife and was about to attack, but when she looked up she saw a foot careening with her face. "Aw shit." Kin was kicked right in the face and slammed right into the wall while being knocked unconscious. Hayate ran over to the kunoichi and checked her over. She was unconscious and would not be up for a while. Hayate stood up and turned towards the audience. The winner of match 1, Amaru. The Jinchūriki clapped as Amaru walked up the stairs. Hayate returned to the stands and waited for the board to select the next match. The board ran through the names until it landed on the next two opponents. Ni Yugito, Tenten, said kunoichi jumped into the arena as Yugito pulled out a set of clawed gloves while Tenten produced a few scrolls. The two kunoichi faced each other with Tenten giving an arrogant grin while Yugito stood there calmly. The match between Ni Yugito and Tenten, Hajime. Tenten quickly unrolled her scrolls and produced over a dozen different weapons. She grabbed two throwing scythes and threw them at Yugito and then grabbed a couple kunai with them. She threw them to follow up the scythes and then ran at Yugito with a whip chain. Yugito quickly sliced at the scythes, destroying the blades. She then cut the kunais directly down the middle. At the last minute she stopped the incoming whip chain that Tenten had swung at her. She tightened her grip and pulled on the chain. Yugito smirked in satisfaction and then suddenly let off a bit of slack, and then used as much force as she could to tug on the whip chain. Tenten lost her footing and ended up being swung through the air. She quickly righted herself and let her feet go first as she nearly hit the wall. Crack! She cringed as she felt her leg break and she had to release the chain she was using. Yugito quickly pulled back and grabbed the chain's handle and began inspecting it, a remarkable piece of equipment, perfectly clean, no dents, no fingerprints, a mockery of a weapon. She used her claws and slashed the chain to pieces. A weapon must be in good condition, yes, but a weapon is useless unless its user can work it, and by the looks of your weapons you spend more time cleaning them than practicing with them. Tenten snarled at Yugito. What do you know? I doubt a little Kumo bitch would know anything about our village, or how we weapon masters pride ourselves in our weapons. Tenten reached into her pocket and pulled out an embroidered scroll. Let me show you how we of Konoha outclass you Kumo scum. She ran her blood across a set of seals and a massive puff of smoke appeared. When it cleared, an elegant yet bulky sword was in Tenten's hands. The blade was curved, but it had a wide blade. It looked as if it had seen many battles, but it also looked like it was extremely well cared for. There wasn't a speck of dust on it, in fact it looked like it hasn't seen daylight in years. Yugito scoffed at the sight of the blade. I admit the blade is impressive, it looks like it has seen many a battle, but judging by the looks of it, it probably hasn't seen daylight in over a year. Tenten snarled at Yugito and charged. Shut up, bitch. Before Tenten could make it 5 feet, she felt a painful strike to her stomach and heard a cracking sound. She looked down to see that she had been punched in the stomach. She looked to where she heard the cracking sound to find her sword cracked, no, shattered. She fell down as she looked at the fallen remains of her favorite sword destroyed. Yugito set her to the ground as she began to lecture her. A weapons mistress, you. That's a laugh. Only one who truly masters their weapons, only one who spends all their days studying, training, conditioning their body to use all weapons, deserves that name. She walked over Tenten and intentionally stepped onto the only non-broken piece of the blade, the hilt, as she walked back up the steps. Tenten was carried off the arena as the next matchups were being displayed. Inuzuka Kiba, Uzumaki Naruto. Kiba smiled in satisfaction as he began howling in delight. Amaru, looks like it's our lucky day, boy. The dog boy jumped into the arena as Naruto did the same. The two stared at each other as Hayate called, the match between Uzumaki Naruto and Inuzuka Kiba, Hajime.